I will take the liberty of saying a few words in the opening of today's panel. Welcome to the fifth and final day of the Green Transition Forum. This is the day devoted to innovation. And I will start by quoting Enrico Letta, who on Monday this week, in the same very room, said, "This week, because of the Green Transition Forum, Sofia is the European capital where the important discussion of the transformation of the future is taking place." I think this is sufficient recognition to us, the organizers, and you, the audience of this event. But today we are not talking about innovation. We're talking about the policy of innovation and the tension between the speed of the technological changes and the slow, sometimes cautious rhythm of institutions when they respond to this. When we say innovation and Europe within the same sentence, the verb is lagging behind. Europe is lagging behind in terms of innovation. But Europe is lagging behind not because there are no ideas or there is no talent. Sometimes it lags behind because of the absence of courage and the absence of a mechanism to sufficiently quickly transform innovation into action. It also suffers from a deficit, the deficit of dialogue, and that is why this event is so important. Interest in this event demonstrates that what is needed is an open, clear dialogue which is focused on solving problems, that sugar-coated talks benefit nobody anymore. So in these 5 days we have over 550 participants, 350 panelists and speakers, over 50 panels and participants from 32 different countries. So this speaks for itself. This talk about the future is needed. So today we are going to talk not only about innovation and technology, but also at everything which makes this topic possible, innovation possible. We're going to talk about science, education. In the different panels today, we're going to talk about AI, digitalization, cybersecurity, and I want to very clearly and loudly thank the European institutions, the European Commission, which is taking part for the 5th year running in this event. And it is taking a part in at the highest level with a clear commitment to take part in the talk, to send a clear message, and to hearing what is being said by the business community, by experts. And I would like to thank the Bulgarian government as well. It's our key partner. In this event, this year, we invited the different ministers. They took up the invitation, they took part in the event, and openly took part in the discussion of the transition which concerns us all. And today with us, we have two people who are not afraid of difficult questions. Namely, I want to thank them specifically, and I want to thank them specifically. This is Ms. Ekaterina Zakharieva, the European Commissioner who talks about innovation as a tool for transformation in real terms. And she is responsible for startups, and she looks at them not only as newly created companies, but as a way for Europe to remain active in a world where technology is the new geopolicy. And in our opening panel, she will take part in the discussion in this panel, and she's also going to talk about the innovative ecosystem of Bulgaria. And we'll hear her opinion as to what innovators in the different institutions expect, not only in terms of intention, but also in the shape of a specific framework. I would like to specifically thank the Deputy Prime Minister, Tomislav Donchev, another key participant in this panel is Mr. Donchev. He is one of the rare one of a rare breed of politicians. He is not afraid of difficult questions because he knows that the easy answers are often a mistake. To him, the reform is not just a form of speech, it is rather a habit not to put up with the lack of originality and the constant effort to change the environment, to make things happen. I can't help saying that what the Ministry of Innovation is doing at the moment, in the context of the Euro funds, the money that we thought was lost, thanks to him and his team, this money can be invested in the Bulgarian economy now. And if I am to use the language of football, when the ball in the 19th minute of the match was outside the field, he managed to bring it back, and this country is now doing pretty well on the European play field. Then we are also going to hear Mr. Mudrov. He is going to talk about the digital government as a way to achieve sustainability. And we're going to talk about education, because any kind of innovation is hollow without it. We are going to talk about the transition, and we are going to talk about something which is not easy, to think of the future not as a threat, but as an opportunity. And Mr. Acemoglu reminded us in his lecture something which may sound a bit banal, but it is the very truth. And when I asked Professor Acemoglu who would be the owner of the future, his answer was, nothing is predefined, everything is in our hands. And this is probably the most important conclusion of these 5 days. The future is not something that is waiting for us to take place. It is something that is waiting for us to construct. And now I'd like to ask the panelists to begin with their contributions. Thank you for your attention. Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure. It's wonderful to be in such an interesting panel and in such interesting company. But before we begin with our questions, allow me to give the floor to Ms. Katerina Zakharieva, European Commissioner for Startups, Research and Innovation. She's our keynote speaker, and she would like to address you now. Minister Donchev, Mr. Stanishev, Madam Stanishev, dear panelists and dear friends, I'll try to be brief in my, as you called it, keynote contribution to this event. I think we're all here to conduct a sincere and open discussion. I would like to congratulate you on what you are doing in these 5 days. Indeed, Mr. Lett is right. In these 5 days, when you brought together politicians from the highest level, the European Commission, the governments, from startups, innovation companies, citizens, you bring all of us together in order to talk about the green transition, to retain the competitiveness of the Bulgarian economy and the startups in Europe. I think this is extremely important. As you see, of late, in Europe, in Brussels and the different capitals, the green transition, the Green Deal, is discussed far more timidly. The topic is either completely excluded from these discussions, and it is condemned as the worst thing that has happened to the world, to Europe and to our economy, or the Green Deal is being politicized, and the challenges in trying to achieve its goals are completely neglected. then the prevailing understanding seems to be that the European Commission is stepping back from the Green Deal. Let me assure you this is not the case. However, the discussion did change indeed, both in Brussels and in the national capitals. From the point of view of the pure ideology as to how to achieve the goals without taking into account the difficulties and the challenges, to a more pragmatic approach to achieving the goals of the Green Deal. I think this is the correct approach. This is how it should be. Because the opposite, namely not taking into account challenges, poured water into the mill of the populist movement. And when I took part in various discussions in the European Parliament, I saw a very clear distinction. Even when the topic was completely different, I saw the very clear difference between the traditional political families, as we call them, and the far right. So I think our approach is correct because common sense will dampen the voice of populists. We can't achieve the goals of the Green Deal if we do not preserve our economy. It simply can't be done. Without a competitive, growing economy, neither the digital or the green transition would be possible. And these are the new priorities in the current term of the European Commission, focusing on implementing the goals while we preserve the competitiveness of our economy. How are we going to do it? First of all, simplification of the rules. You see that for 6 months, for the last 6 months, this Commission has proposed several packages of legislation which aim at diminishing reporting, speeding up market access, and I think this would be quickly approved by the European Parliament and the European Council. Why do we need to achieve the goals of the green transition and retain competitiveness? You said it yourself, Monica. This is one of my own priorities, namely retaining, preserving the strategic autonomy of the European continent. We are not starting from scratch there. We often talk about the negative sides of our transition. But I would like to begin with something positive. We have everything we need in order to catch up. First of all, we have the talent. We are the best educated continent. We have 5% of the world population, but we hold 22% of global patents. And in the what we call clean technologies, this is quite substantial. We have 5% of the global population and 20% of the scientists in the world. This is a very solid foundation, if I might call it that way. On the other hand, we have a market of 450 million. It's a bigger market than the US market, which is 350 million. However, makes it more difficult for us to move forward is the fragmentation in our market. For an innovative company in the US, in order to reach out to 350 million, this is done simultaneously, while in our continent, for any company, any business, to reach out to 450 million, it takes years because there are 27 different regimes concerning labor legislation, corporate registration, taxation, certification, and receiving all the necessary permits. So this is the biggest reason not to have well-developed capital markets, for instance. This is what pulls us back. Why don't we have the funds to support startups? In the EU, we have no more than 12 such funds, and their capital amounts to 1 billion euro. And this is by far not enough to maintain this ecosystem. And this is no more than 5% of the global funds which support startups. Only 5% out, and compare that to 52 in the US. So as Monica said, we have all the preconditions, we have the ideas, we have the talent in place. What we need to do, and we are focused on it, is to finally complete building our single market. We need to try to overcome fragmentation, at least part of it, and this is a task for the next 5 years, and create or support creating big, large-scale funds which will retain our innovative companies on the European continent. I personally believe that one of the major losses for Europe is, as you call it in English, the innovation flowing out of the European continent.
Създаваме талантите тук, образоваме ги, имаме всички.
We have all the tools that we need in order to start up a company, to start doing business. We have the grant schemes in Europe. We have the European the funds under Horizon Europe, the tools of the toolkit of the European Investment Bank. And when these companies need to grow and become the European or global champion, we do not have the large-scale funding that can support this growth. I'm proud to be the first commissioner in the history of the European Union who is responsible for startups, the startup commissioner. And in the first 6 months of my term in office, I was seeking very actively contacts with startups from all 27 member states. I'm happy we presented a large-scale company on the 28th of May, and it was focused on startup companies, on startups. It was very well regarded. And the goal of this effort was to make Europe a good place for startups. Of course, we focus on better opportunities for funding, easier access to the single market or to the market as such, creating and retaining, keeping talent, and creating the infrastructure that is needed by innovators. I'm not going to dwell on all 26 measures in this strategy, but it can be implemented only when we join efforts, when the European Commission, the member states, and the private sector join efforts in order to catch up this lagging behind, which unfortunately took place in the last few decades. And I will end up by saying something, and I don't know if Enrico mentioned it, but I like it so very much in his report on the single market. In Europe, there are two types of countries. There are small member states and those which did not realize they're small yet, and yet they haven't done it yet. So when we are together, we can deal with the fierce competition in terms of technologies and technological leadership. Monica said that the new geopolitical tensions would be the tension on technologies and patents. And this is completely correct. It's the competition as to who would be the first to come out on the market of high tech. And this is not going to go away by governments realizing that we need to keep our planet clean. High tech and leadership in high tech will be the priority number one for all governments on the planet. And let me assure you that the European Commission and I We are determined to do what it takes to support innovators to choose Europe. So I'd like to wish every success to this event. Once again, thank you that we are together, that we're going to be together for the next 4 hours or so. I would be happy to take your questions, including the difficult ones. And allow me again to wish every success to this event.
Thank you very much, Madam Zakharieva. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Tomisław Donchev, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Innovation and Growth. Madam Commissioner, friends, colleagues, I would like to apologize that I would not be able to name each and every one of you in my address, but that would take too long. I'm grateful that Katja started her speech in the way she did, not formally, not talking about funds or incubators or the standard narrative that we're so weary of already. And it's the wrong way to have this discussion. I'm not saying that hubs and tech parks and everything else is not important. However, the capacity of private equity funds, those who seek unicorns to finance startups, all that is huge. It's much greater than what we have here in Bulgaria. And their capacity to develop a unique product is much higher than the capacity of public administration. Our discussion should be about something else. All this institutional terminology, it is important, but what we need is the social impulse, the impetus. We do not discuss the new economy. Unfortunately, this is not a conversation in the media or in the government. We talk about insurance companies, we talk about agriculture, etc., and those are important issues. But if you are talented enough, if you work late in the night, your name will be remembered. To strive for success is a very powerful engine. We should talk about that. And it's a question of when we do that and how we do it. Whatever incentives we create, we would not be able to make much progress without that. I'm not saying that institutionally we have always done our job properly. And I can be critical not just of the Bulgarian administration and Bulgarian government, but also of the EU institutions. There are a lot of contradictory signals being sent out about competitiveness and about other important topics. We lightly add the military industry to that topic. Well, that's great, but how do we strike a balance between the military industry and green policies? Because the military industry is a high emission industry. So it's a bit facetious. We have to consider where we draw the line and how we strike the balance. It's important for the future. And as we are today open to criticize ourselves and even more open to criticize the others, let me say that what we tend to lack is boldness. and even arrogance, and that's important for business. But we need boldness first. We often mention artificial intelligence, sometimes enthusiastically, sometimes anxiously. But it's important both to develop it and then restrict it. And I'm convinced that AI is going to be one of the factors to generate competitiveness if used smartly. Yes, it would bring huge shocks on the labor market. Very soon, making use of AI, a skilled worker would be able to do, a single worker would be able to do the job of 20 or 100. That would open up huge opportunities. But those who are able to use AI in the best possible way would have a competitive advantage. They'll be able to manufacture unique products. However, what are we doing here in Europe? Our knee-jerk reaction is to try and regulate AI. Our main competitors in China and in the US are doing all they can to develop it, to ensure that it evolves as quickly as possible. And what we do, we regulate. I'm not saying that regulations are not important, and AI can enable misuse of all kinds. But I do believe that we have to be bolder, we have to be more courageous. Because there is a lot of fear of progress, and this is not something new. This has been since times immemorial. We know what's happened when the first automobiles were manufactured and what fear that created, that they're going to kill people in the streets. So it's normal, it's natural to fear progress and change. But it seems to me that when we talk about Europe, we need to have the boldness to leave our comfort zone. Fear is not an option. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Donchev. We move on, but before we come to the Q&A session, I would like to ask the rest of our panel to introduce themselves, to make their opening remarks, tell us what they do. So let's start with Mr. Zenov.
Hello from me as well. My name is Svetoslav Zenov. I'm the executive manager of Stellas Pharma for Bulgaria, Romania. In other words, big pharma. I have had the pleasure to work in the health sector in the last few years outside the pure management in different countries. I was lucky enough to deal with health digitalization in different fields, including globally, including in Europe, including in the US, including China. So this forum is really very close to my heart, and I'm very happy that I'm here. Thank you for the invitation. And I am sure it will be really very helpful. Thank you for taking up our invitation. Ms. Maria Lucas, could you please introduce yourself?
Time that I'm at this forum of Green Transition. My name is Maria Lucas. I am CEO and founder, so I'm one of those entrepreneurs that have been benefiting from the European Commission and from the push within technology. It's a pleasure to be in the Green Transition Forum because we're actually developing green chemistry, and we do this in a computer. It is possible, it is there. It's still not heard of enough, and I really appreciate the comments that have been made previously because indeed, the US market is a global market, but here in Europe, we kind of need to go to each single country and talk about what we're doing. So, very simply, I'm a quantum chemist that decided one day to go to the computer and develop enzymes that basically catalyze reactions. This means we can manufacture clothing, even our food, medicines. This is what I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria, for the introduction. And госпожа Саша Безуханова.
Ms. Sasha Bezukhanova, you have the floor now. Hello, my name is Sasha Bezukhanova, and in the context of this discussion, I could say that my whole life, my whole professional career has been developed to innovation in Bulgaria and globally. I was in the management of Hewlett-Packard for 20 years, and I made a personal contribution to developing the Bulgarian IT industry. In the last 13 years, I have been involved in MoveBG. I'm one of the co-founders, and I have devoted my efforts to innovations in the society. This includes support, incentives, and building up the Bulgarian innovation ecosystem. In the last 5 years, I have been focused in my efforts on green innovation and providing support to green innovation. Green innovation is pretty underestimated in Bulgaria, and I hope that I make a contribution through my involvement in this effort. And I'm also a member of the advisory board of the European Investment Bank on new financial facilities focused on sustainability and green development. I also work in EIC. I forget what the Bulgarian would be, European Innovative Council. So thank you very much for your support to the startups and scale-ups in Europe, which have the best prospects to develop so that they can become part and parcel of the global economy and support Europe's competitiveness. Thank you, Sasha.
Reeser.
Hello and good morning. It's such an honor to be here with you today. My name is David Reeser. I'm the CEO and founder of Opioid, a data science company making the treatment of substance use disorder safer and more effective. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to share with you today. And my goal is to support innovative startups, no matter where they are, to help them be successful, help them to drive change that's going to meaningfully impact mankind. I am a serial entrepreneur from the US. I've done this a few times. I've had some failures along the way, but I go big or go home. So I'm going to bring an American perspective to the conversation today. And I'm here to learn and to share some things with you that I think they'll be really helpful. So thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this very important and esteemed panel.
Thank you, David. Looking forward to it. И няколко много бързи думи за мен. Мария.
And a few words about myself. My name is Maria Marinova. I am a CEO of the Bulgarian Association for equity capital. And we support startups and companies, and we support also growing companies. We start up with the competitiveness discussion in Central and Eastern Europe. And Ms. Zakharieva, you already shared what you have done so far within the European Commission. Congratulations on that, and congratulations on taking up such hard tasks. Can you tell us more about the European startup and scale-up strategy? What are the key components of it? How are you going to provide support to not only startups but also scale-up companies? And what is the feedback that you received from the sector after the discussions you conducted at such a high level? Thank you for this question. This is the time now to talk about what we can do together, because the strategy is, yes, indeed, a good foundation, but it's no more than a foundation. If we do not start right away to implement the measures in this strategy, it will be simply a beautiful report, and it will remain nothing more, nothing less than that. This is not my goal, and I'm here talking about my goal. We want to cooperate with funds, with investors, in support of young innovators. And I was criticized that the first draft of the strategy looks like a to-do list. This is what one of the participants called it. And I said, great, this was exactly my goal. The idea of this strategy is not only to come up with, not just to come up with beautiful language in it, and to say how important it is to develop and support IE, biotechnologies, new technologies in healthcare, defense technologies, and so on. And that's clear to all. We have to demonstrate that we have to demonstrate our strengths and our weaknesses and how we're going to overcome the latter. I very much liked Mr. Donchev's contribution, talking about courage. We do indeed need more courage. If we had more courage, we wouldn't be doing worse than the US or China in startups. We have the ideas. We, however, lack the partial boldness or courage we need, that is, to give a chance to invest into innovators. And some of the ideas may sound like a fairy tale, may sound like a dream. However, this is precisely where the multi-billion companies are born. When these ideas were first coming up, they sounded like a fairy tale, like a dream, even crazy at some point, yes. And this is the boldness we lack in Europe. And we may be different. Yes, there are specifics in each in each of the member states, but we are different in the way we invest. We're far more conservative in this area than the US and China. And this is true practically of all the member states. There are few exceptions. Some of the Nordic countries are leading this in this culture of equity funding. And we need to begin by changing the culture of the business culture in Europe. If we don't step by step start changing there, so perhaps in 10 years, when another commissioner will come here to mark the 15th anniversary of Euroforum, we'll be talking as to how to catch up with our competitors. We don't have, however, that much time to waste. We have to do it right away. However, while waiting for this culture to change, we can't sit back and do nothing. We need to support this culture through the tools that we have. I am sorry, I'm calling you Tommy, but Tommy is right. Tommy is right in saying that we can't do that only with using public resource. Impossible. Horizon Europe is the biggest program of this kind in the world. The biggest program indeed, but it is only 10% of the public investment in the European Union. So public investment cannot possibly do it alone. And the European programs cannot do it alone either. And this is my call to the member states. You need to invest and let us do what it takes to achieve the goal that we ourselves set 22 years ago, 3% investments in science, innovation, and education. And this is the ambition of the member states, not the ambition of the European Commission. It was set up 22 years ago, and we are still at 2.4%. And what's important here is to motivate, to mobilize private investment, and we need different incentives for that. It may be tax reliefs for investment in innovation, and this is being done by many countries. I call on Bulgaria to start considering this as well. The results in such countries are clear, and the high investment in startups, in venture capital, in generally increasing private investment in science and innovation. The second option is to start creating tools which would cover the first loss. The third approach,
Неща, между другото, ги има в стратегията. Се опитвам да я разкажа по по-интересен начин.
and I'm trying to be more interesting rather than listing the 26 measures. So another possibility is to create a joint fund of European programs and private investors. We are very close to doing that. We called it Scale Up Europe Fund, or European Fund for scale-up companies. We need to demonstrate to the private sector that we are serious, that we are ready to take risks. We are investing substantial amount from the Horizon Europe Fund. We have invited European Investment Bank to invest in it as well. But our idea is that at least 2/3 of the capital will come from the big investors in Europe. And the good news is that there is a lot of money in Europe. We have no issue with capital. We have money. However, we need to make this capital work. And it will start doing work when we implement this whole package of measures, and we all need to implement them. Tax incentives, covering the first risk, creating joint funds together with the private sector. And I'm certain that if this package of measures is implemented, very quickly, indeed, very quickly, private investors will start also doing what it takes. And my goal in 5 years' time is that at the end of this legislature, it would not be necessary to set up such a fund, that the private capital would be covering the needs to support startups and private companies. Will help with grants, will help support the science and innovation. Once the company becomes a scale-up, on the other hand, it would be supported, hopefully, by private capital. However, this can't be done without the other measure, quick market access. We're very slow. We're at least 4 times slower than we should be. If a company needs decades, indeed decades, to reach out to all 27 member states. Imagine 10 years in order to reach out to all these member states. Very often, this company needs new certification in each of the member states. It needs to get certificates, and if it's a federation, the member state would require this company to go to all the individual provinces. And we need to do something else. Traditional industries need to be convinced to use European innovation. And here we need to talk about the way we in Europe go about public procurement, how we buy innovation. Frankly speaking, we don't buy innovation all that much. We very often do not help our companies. In our competitors, very often the first client of such innovative companies is the government, it's public procurement. And we are now working on public procurement at the moment in order for governments to opt for choosing European innovation. And this should be the first step. If other innovations are on the market and European innovation is competitive with them, yes, we should opt for it. Of course, the government can provide incentives. It can provide incentives for the product to become an innovation. But as I said, we need to work on the incentives that the government can provide. Traditional, well-established companies should become startups to innovation, clients to startups, and innovation there should be supported. And we need to motivate them. We have a great program in Horizon Europe. It's called Applied Science, and there we work together with academia, and we need to involve startups there as well. And it's necessary to make it triangle and join efforts on all these fronts. And last but not least, how to retain talent. These are the goals of this strategy. There are ways to do it. Talent follows opportunity. When we create the best opportunity, talent will choose to remain in Europe. Because Europe, and frankly, this is the case, we may moan and groan with or without good reasons for that. I'm not going to get into this. But Europe is the best place to live. All over the world, there is nothing better than Europe. No accident that migration pressure is so high, and all the surveys show that Europeans may wish to go to another European country, or if you choose where to be born, all the member states say in Europe. It may be a different country, it may be a different member state, but all Europeans want to, if they could be reborn, to be reborn again in Europe. So Europe is the best place to live, and it should become also the best place to do business. This is the goal of this strategy. Thank you for your attention. I'm sorry I spoke at length.
Now we turn back to Mr. Donchev. Let's talk about this strategy. What's the situation here in Bulgaria? How can we help Bulgarian companies so that they become champions of innovation? How can we align ourselves with the rest of the EU? How can we make the best possible use of the strategy? Well, I have a standard answer to this question, what the government can do for something. Well, the honest answer is, first, it's another question, what should we do in order not to get in the way? I do not want to repeat cliches. I can tell you easily about strategies and action plans and what is going to be invested in innovation and small and medium-sized enterprises, but that's information that is publicly available. 3 months ago, there was a meeting with the CEO and the engineers of a large companies, which has a lab at one of the technical universities. As you perhaps know, we invest in centers of excellence. Hundreds of millions of euro. We have high-tech, state-of-the-art equipment. So we go to this lab, we look around the laboratories, and we see a piece of equipment. And one of the entrepreneurs says, upon seeing that piece of equipment, I didn't know that this was available here. I use it for my tests, but for that I go all the way to Vienna. So there you go. So we have the equipment. It's what companies need, but they haven't got a clue that it is actually available in Bulgaria and it's accessible. And that's something that we need to change. So we need to ensure that the business has access to what it needs. In terms of research and development, I believe we are still lagging behind, but it's not so difficult to change that situation. But I agree with Katja that public funding will not be sufficient for that purpose. We need to explain to everybody, to the politicians, to the media, to the academia. It's one thing to be able to make something. The value added is relatively low if it's a low-tech product. If it's a high-tech product, the value added increases. If you design something, that's even better. And if you can design something that nobody else can design, well, that's something completely different in terms of what the entrepreneur is going to get, in terms of the tax that's going to be saved. The Bulgarian economy in the past 15 years has been growing in a sustainable way in terms of its added value. You see the structure of the industry changing. It's not just about producing raw materials now. Just one remark. So the only thing that we're probably not doing is accelerating those developments to the extent that it needs to be accelerated, because we need to ensure that the factors that can turn everything around are in place. We created the Insight Institute just a couple of years ago, and that's something new, something different, something that will open up opportunities for the business. And I believe this is the role of the government. Going back to what I said at the beginning, it's a question of not what the government can do for the business, as much as it is about what we need to do in order not to be in the way. And by way of a conclusion, I would say that I had very good discussions with a lot of the participants in this forum. I got very positive feedback, and I'm just hoping that this panel would not spoil the overall positive impression. Mr. Donchev, you're right that we have a lot of positive examples coming from Bulgaria, and we need to multiply those. Mr. Tsanov, my next question is for you. Can you share some of the best examples from the EU in your field of work? You mentioned the Horizon program already. Can you also talk about some of the challenges before the sector, some of the remaining challenges? Let me start with what is positive. Ms. Zakharieva already said it. The Horizon Europe program is the largest research and innovation program in Europe. I don't know if everybody is aware of that. There is a lot of talk about this program, but we've reached almost 100 billion euros in investment, and that's a huge resource. But perhaps what is more important is not just the size of the resources, the funding, but what it targets, what objectives it sets itself. And what is good about these programs is that we have clear objectives. We talk digitalization, AI, sustainability of technology, and that's very important. It's about answering the question of how Europe can be autonomous or at least less dependent in terms of its investment and its economic development. The transparency of the Horizon programme is also a key element. Later on, I'll talk also about the challenges, although I think a lot of these have already been outlined. But what does this all mean in the health sector? We talk about digitalization, but what is digitalization here? Let me give you a couple of examples. Imagine you are conducting a retinal scanning based on AI. There are applications already which can predict with 90% certainty whether an individual is likely to have a myocardial infarction in the coming 5 years. And this is not science fiction. It is possible to test such applications, and more than 17 European countries are part of the Tech Health platform. Another example of digitalization. Last year, we conducted a review of more than 100,000 mammography scans. And this is a standard test, testing for breast cancer. And it was found that in 10% of the cases, these images led to a false positive or a false negative diagnosis. You can imagine what that means. So this is just an example of the benefits of digitalization. I mentioned already Tech Health, and it allows for such applications to be tested and then approved for clinical use. We have a unicorn in Poland, for example, that gives patients the opportunities to book appointments based on the medical professionals they need and also their geographical location. This is a very popular application that was launched in Europe, and it is being scaled up unlike others. So this is yet another positive example. Mr. Donchev is here, so we can give examples from Bulgaria. TalkUp is another such application, but it lacks scalability. And yet another application called Strack. It's also a patient support application. As Ms. Hariva said, patents are in Europe. It's a question of commercializing them in the right way. And one last positive example related to Horizon Europe program. It's about treatment and our genomes. It is our genes that define us. So you buy a drug for your headache, but it's effective for some patients and it isn't for others. And that's based on our genetic profile, and it defines the way we experience pain and a way diseases sometimes develop. So through this application I'm talking about, we're able to map genomes. This is the Pan-European Genome Project, and a lot of European universities take part in it. It allows for developing innovations in this area. And finally, about European data space, another initiative that is funded under the Horizon Europe program. It is a unique project. Any researcher anywhere in Europe. All the tests that are conducted get there. We have this kind of cross-border exchange of data, and this encourages the development of innovations. This is something that hasn't got an analog in the United States or elsewhere. So I'll stop here, but let me just end by saying one last thing about the so-called technology transfer and the tech transfer offices at universities. This is one reason for patents not to be commercialized later. In the United States, there is a debatable act dating back to the 1980s, and it allows universities to license and patent discoveries that have been brought about with public funding. So perhaps this is something that we need to make use of as well. Yes, and it is part of the strategy as well. Mr. Donchev, you would like to add something?
Нещо, което
Indeed, technology transfer is something we have been discussing in Bulgaria, and we were hoping to hear something you were going to say.
Now to ask Maria pretty much the same question, but in your sphere of work, like how can EU helps your work, but at the same time, what are the challenges that remain? And maybe adding a little bit of the gender lens here, given that you're also working on empowering women, particularly in your sphere, but in general in entrepreneurship and investment.
Thank you, Maria. Before I made the mistake of keeping the headphones on, and I was listening to myself in English, and it was just confusing, so sorry about that. I think today there are three topics that have already been surfaced. Boldness, the courage to take challenges, fragmentation. Europe is fragmented, and this is an issue. But there's another point that has also been mentioned, and that I'm going to focus on concerning your question, which is time. Right now, we're in a moment in history where the sense of urgency is pushing us to invest in security and AI. But everything that we do, everything that we need to produce materials. Sorry, I'm going to push here. And the green transition was never going to be a target that was going to happen quickly. And we seem to forget that. Our company is 8 years old. We have created kind of like an operating system that allows you to manufacture in a clean and sustainable way pretty much anything. And it took us 6 years to get our technology mature enough for the market to actually accept it. How has the EIC helped us? We were the recipient of an EIC accelerator grant, I think 5 years ago. And at that time, we were actually implementing AI into our model. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we were not talking about AI. We were already doing that. So the European Commission gives us time to develop technologies that require years to be developed before they can actually have an impact in the market. So if we think about VC, a venture capital will never put money in our company 8 years ago, ever, because they know it's going to take years. So here is where Europe is really supporting companies. Today, we're already at seed stage with 2 rounds of investment, and this is because we were supported at early stage. So the EIC program is fundamental. And again, I'm talking about time, the moment, the right moment to invest. We have been supported not only in funding for our company, and I'm actually going to go to your last point. Some years ago, the commissioner at that time responsible for innovation thought that there weren't enough women being invested in. So several programs were created. For example, the Woman Innovators Prize. I was a recipient. What did that allow me? Well, it gave me visibility, but it was not enough. And now I go to the point of what else can Europe do? We're a fragmented ecosystem. We need to talk. So our company today, the 2 main markets are France and the US. What about all of the other European countries? We have to go to each and every one of them with a sales strategy, and this is not a simple process. So what could Europe maybe do for us? Impact, influence, lobby, and lobby is something very big in the US, and I think we're kind of still missing lobbying. Maybe the European Commission could be lobbying for these companies that are having an impact. We're missing that, I don't know, that visibility, that possibility to meet with different governments and say, hey, you have an issue? Think about COVID. We kind of forget our recent history. We couldn't produce our own medicines because our starting materials often were coming from India, and they didn't reach our market. Have we forgotten about this? Like now it's all about security and AI, but manufacturing, changing the way we manufacture, we need to produce locally. And that means, and I am originally Canadian, grew up in Portugal, living in Spain, 100% European, manufacturing needs to happen here. We need chips, we need starting materials, we need food. And as Europeans, we will not allow anything to be manufactured in our background. So the only way we can bring manufacturing back to Europe is actually doing it in a clean, sustainable way. So my ask to the European Commission, since I have them here, is give visibility to European companies to talk with governments, to show that the technology is already here, because tax incentives are fundamental. It doesn't matter how much the innovation is needed. Until the economy starts pressuring, it's not going to happen. So companies today, if they want to improve their processes, if they want to be more sustainable, there's still a huge economic gap. So companies, there are many, and those are our customers, but many smaller companies particularly, they can't take on this challenge because even a 2% premium on their product is going to kick them out of the market. So governments need to promote clean manufacturing in Europe. And this is, everyone knows it's needed, but no one is really doing anything about it. And I go back to being brave and the fragmented ecosystem. It's there, we know it's there. Our governments need to be brave, our European Commission needs to be brave, and we need the opportunity, us as entrepreneurs, to sit in front of these governments that can help change decisions, country by country, that will allow our customers to develop technology that maybe we're not aware of today, but we already felt it in our skin during COVID. And normally people say I'm a pessimist. I fear we will be again in a situation where Europe will be isolated from the rest of the world and we will be missing basic materials to produce our medicines.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Maria. Very, very interesting. I was making notes on what you were sharing. Switching off to Bulgarian again.
Now, I will give the floor to Sasha Bezukhanova in view of what was just shared with us. I think this was a very interesting contribution. Sasha, my question to you is, in the context of innovation and the green transition, and we heard from Commissioner Zakharieva as well, she included the topic in her keynote address at the beginning. So can you share with us the survey you conducted together with Move BG on green innovations, and perhaps you can tell us more about it and the following measures which need to be implemented based on this survey. Thank you, Maria, for the opportunity to talk more focused on this topic. I am encouraged by the fact that Commissioner Zakharieva specifically stressed the green aspect of the innovation policy and the new strategy of the European Union. To me, there's not enough understanding in the society as a whole, and not just in Bulgaria, that the economy of the future is not only going to be digitally dependent. It took us 20 years to comprehend that. to implement that in our day-to-day activities. The economy of the future is inevitably going to be green, and not just because all of us see the impact of climate change. We see how the environment changes and that it requires better, more adequate use of our resources, be it the circular economy, through the circular economy, or through the use of specific material. We can make progress. We, humanity, can make progress only once we go back to striking the balance between man and nature for various reasons over time, and various ambitions contributed to destroying this balance. But now Europe again is a leader of this process. The last 7 years in Europe were devoted to setting up, creating a legal framework, a pragmatic framework. It aims at motivating business and helping us understand that decarbonization is part and parcel of competitiveness in the future. And even at the time when there are some politically motivated voices which say that omnibus is an innovation deal which again causes Europe to step back. Large structurally important European companies still keep taking measures in their development towards greener options. And this is within the strategy of Europe. We see that large companies in, let's say, India, in countries like India, follow up in Europe's footsteps in this area. So this is one of the most important advantages of the European and Bulgarian industry. The other step is to support authentically green business, namely startups, small companies which develop solutions based on challenges. They focus on alternatives to polluting plastics which we breathe in, plastic particles which are even in our blood. And we cannot collect all the plastic waste in our bodies. Next time there is a campaign by one of the TV channels comes to mind, a campaign organized by something or somebody. But all these solutions are linked up to both the national and European security. This is the focus at the moment, how in the ever-changing geopolitical environment we find solutions that would, on the one hand, serve the priority concerning security, but at the same time are economically significant, what we call the dual-use solutions. Here in this room, there are representatives of companies which are developing such solutions, but the big question is, do we understand them? Do we recognize them? Do we use these dual-use solutions, because they are in support of the competitive environment of the future, in Bulgaria included. And we decided to support all that with data. No matter what I say, if I don't have data to support what I say, it would only be regarded as my personal attachment to this topic. For 2 years now, we have been studying startups, and the scientific teams in Bulgaria and in other organizations which develop solutions based on nature try to study the capital in this segment. And I have some good news to share. On the 16th of September, we are going to present the results of this study, but I asked for permission to use some of the data, and the data are still being processed. 38% of the startups in Bulgaria I looked at disruptive innovation, specifically how to translate this into Bulgarian. So this means innovation which is focused on solving business issues. So 18% of the scientific teams develop new innovations. 38% of them improve existing scientific solutions. However, when we look where these companies are in Bulgaria, and this is linked up to the conclusions of Commissioner Zakharieva. Only 20% of these companies have received support from equity funds, and only 2% of them receive funding from the government. We can say a lot on this topic. No time to discuss all that. We can talk as who met whom, what was recognized, what the awareness and promotion campaigns were like. But there is capital which should be recognized and supported here. I work on my day-to-day activities together with such companies which need to be recognized. And in these companies, they don't have enough resources to register their patent, or they may have dismissed 2 of their staff and 3 remained. This is an issue that can be easily resolved using the resources of the government, the resources of the European funds. It's very important in the presence of the Commissioner on Innovation, the Minister of Innovation, in the course of this event, to voice some ideas which are more a matter of organization than anything else. Let us together think how the Bulgarian Development Bank, Mr. Donchev, can provide designated space for and support green companies in Bulgaria. This is not the case at the moment. What would be worth doing is to support the capacity of Bulgarian scientists. They need to be trained how to transfer the solutions they have to business, how Bulgarian industrial capital can be used to make it easier to implement such solutions, and they would be useful. Last but not least, with different European involvement, I see something which is a well-recognized systemic problem. France, Germany, Italy, the Nordic countries take part in and make use of European programs. So perhaps this support for innovation should be expanded and thus cover the Eastern European countries. I know that there is a widening countries program, but still the path that our companies need to follow in order to reach the European innovation scene is very long. So there are ways to train such people, to help them do it. But this capital, the capital of Europe, should be recognized and supported. Thank you, Sasha. This is a very strong message. I am sorry. I'll jump in before we give the floor to the last speaker. I see we're running out of time. What Sasha just said is extremely important. Let me dwell on it. Yes, we do need to retain these measures concerning countries, 15 altogether, 15 member states, which have not reached the average level of innovation. And 5 out of these 15 are going to get out of this category soon. So it's important how much the government invests into innovation. And there is direct correlation between the investment of the government in innovation and the degree of success of innovations at the European level. Horizon Europe is not enough. Yes, of course, it supports and will keep supporting the member states which are lagging behind or are perhaps scaling up innovators or modest innovators. These are the terms we use. But it cannot only be this program that would support this effort. I know this government, I know the ministers. We used to work together in the past. I know that this government will do what it takes to provide funding, but this is not enough. National coordinators on the program have a key role to play. Those who are simply bureaucrats and are there simply on the payroll, but fail to present the program to scientists and scientific institutions are the countries where the program fails. So if you do not have such a coordinator on the program, we can help you in that. And if this program starts working properly, it will support not only scientists, but also private sector. I know Tommy would do what it takes, and we'll very soon see the result of his work.
A few minutes of the panel. I saved you for dessert because of your global point of view, and like it's going to be very interesting to hear your conclusion on the talk today. I know you've been listening very attentively. Could you give us your global point of view? US and EU challenges and opportunities in today's world, either in your particular sphere of world or in general?
Absolutely. So this has been a real privilege to be able to listen in and learn. It's been a fascinating conversation. I am from the US. I've benefited from many programs that are similar to what you have here in Europe. And I'm a very positive person. I tend to look for the best in things because if you look for things to work well, they usually do. But I'm also a pragmatist. What can we reasonably do? What's the next right thing that will help advance a mission? Ultimately, what I believe is we need 3 things to be successful in innovation. We need time, talent, and treasure. And it's clear if we talk about innovation as a cornerstone of competitiveness in the world, Europe, CEE is clearly in a wonderful place. And we need entrepreneurs, too, who are perseverant, driven by purpose, and have the skills needed to be able to really move this forward. The challenge that I see is twofold. One, and just for a little bit of perspective, I'm an inventor. I'm a patented inventor. I do healthcare research. I was a healthcare provider for 13 years. I've built and sold multiple companies. I live in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is considered the most innovative city in the world for populations under 300,000, and that's ranked by Startup Genome. I have multiple friends who have taken companies public. One of my friends was a former CTO of eBay. Another gentleman who started Encino and took that public at, I guess it was 6 or 7 billion. So I'm seeing this happen all around me and have seen what works and what doesn't work. And ultimately what it comes down to is this. I think that you have all the infrastructure you could possibly need here to be able to be successful. I really believe that. I also believe you have all the talent that you need. I think you need to deploy more capital and be willing to take more risk. It's almost like if you can imagine a plane on the runway and the plane is the business. You all have built the runway already, but you only half fill the tank of the airplane and tell it to take off. And it's headed to a destination where it may not have enough gas to get there. In the US, we're not afraid to top off that tank. And we're also not afraid to tell the pilot, you know what, if you get into a storm, I have faith in you to be able to fly through that storm. Where in some cases I see such low risk tolerance that they would rather go a longer distance and possibly run out of fuel, money, right? Run out of money before they arrive at the destination than take a risk. Because sometimes it doesn't work out. But that's where you make your greatest breakthroughs. And that's where you really fortify, successful entrepreneurs who are going to go and do it again. So I feel like it's not a matter of having the resources. I think it's a matter of knowing when to jump. I used an expression the other day that I found is very true in life, that when one group is saying that the glass is half full and the other one is saying it's half empty, this intellectual debate, we've already sold the glass and we've moved on to the next business. So at some point you just have to take the risk. You have to go and brave the ocean, and take those losses, but also get the wins. And the other piece is too, instead of thinking about, and please forgive me, and I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way, what you all are doing here is absolutely wonderful. I would love to be a part of it. I would love to support innovation any way that I can to help support my neighbors and see people's lives improve. One of the opportunities I think that we have here, sorry I lost my train of thought for a moment there. I think one of the opportunities here is to see that you already have a lot of what is already needed and just not be afraid to do the next right thing. I really think all the ingredients are here. And some of it is also just training up the entrepreneurs. One of the things that I do back in the States is I'm a mentor for the Johns Hopkins I4 SUD program, which focuses on substance use disorder and behavioral health technologies. And I help the researchers who are going through phase 1 and phase 2 SBIR funding who have built new technologies. I teach them how to bring them to market. And it's really a mind shift going from a researcher to an entrepreneur, but it can absolutely happen. And I think programs like I-Corps that we have for the National Institute of Health and National Science Foundation, of which I'm a graduate of the I-Corps program, are really crucial. And mirroring some of what we're doing in the US here, I think could help accelerate some of these new startups, particularly in healthcare. But I do believe that what's happening in Europe is beautiful. You are set up for success. Without question. I think some of this is just a matter of boldness, a matter of taking some risk, and also, funding these startups so that they can get more than just off the runway. You need funds to get started. I can tell you as a CEO of a data science company today, we're up against all kinds of hurdles. And for the entrepreneur, it's not about the circumstances that you're in, it's how you react to them. So we've got to build these resilient entrepreneurs who can navigate these uncertain waters, because the conditions are never going to be great. If we wait for policies to be perfect, to make everything easy, it's not realistic. It's taking the little bit of resources that you have and making the absolute most of it, and figuring out how to commercialize a portion of what you've created in such a way that it becomes sustainable. And also I think that there's an opportunity for some binational agreements where instead of just thinking about how can we break some of the walls through the European companies or European countries, maybe there's opportunities for binational agreements with the US. Where where I could help you break into the U.S. market, maybe you could help me break into the European market. These already exist. There's something called the Bird Foundation, where Israel does binational agreements with the United States. In fact, one of my friends exited twice from $1 million investment through the Bird Foundation. So opportunities like this really exist. And another comment that was made earlier, and I'll just wrap up here, is just I think one of the other great challenges is just the fragmentation. To a point that was made earlier, I can put my message out there and sell into 50 states across the U.S., over 400 million people. Yeah, it's actually pretty easy to do. And here it's so fragmented, so it becomes more challenging. Why not do agreements with the United States where you get to sell into that market? Because we have unique challenges now too in the last 6 months or so, where we would love to sell in the European market, and we could open up new markets for each other. Because ultimately it's about where the money lands, right? If the founders that are here are raising millions of dollars wherever they're raising them, but they're bringing the money back home and investing in their communities, I think that's really the win here. But I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of my thoughts and for the opportunity to be here and learn and listen as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Thank you. So really, brevity and scale. This is really sounded like a perfect conclusion to our panel today. Благодаря на всички за прекрасния панел. В заключение.
Thank you very much, each and every one of you. I asked ChatGPT whether the EU can become a global innovation leader. The answer was yes. If we were to do 1, 2, 3, a list of things, and those things have been on the agenda for today. So we are optimistic about the future. Thank you very much and have a great day.